Welcome. I'm Sarah Cott, Senior Vice President of Programming at The Hill. Thank you all for joining us in person this morning, and thank you to everyone that's joining us online. How new pathways to credit are changing the small business landscape. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Wells Fargo, for their support of this discussion. We're here today to explore the new entrepreneurial landscape in the U.S. In the last 2 years, a record 10.5 million small business applications were filed, yet only 30% of small business owners feel their credit needs are being met. In just a moment, we'll hear from members of the administration, Congress, and financial service industry, and small business owners and advocates directly. It is worth noting that we always strive to represent both parties at our events. Despite our best effort, we were not able to include a Republican congressperson due to scheduling conflicts. Before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. If you're with us here in the room, please keep your phones on silent for the duration of the program. And please join the conversation on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Hill Events. And with that, I am delighted to welcome Bob Cusack, Editor-in-Chief of The Hill, to the stage, who will introduce our first guest.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I do want to introduce our first guest from the administration. It's Associate Administrator Mark Madrid, who leads the SBA's Office of Entrepreneurial Development. Mark, please welcome.
How are you, Bob?
First question, I just want to ask some news of the week. The House Small Business Committee recently held a hearing on COVID funds. We're coming out of the pandemic. Obviously, small businesses, and we'll talk about that, bear the brunt of that economic distress. But now, Republicans on the committee are saying that SBA, there was not enough oversight of the COVID funds, specifically on PPP. The administrator didn't testify. Republicans weren't happy about that. I just want to get your response to that and what the administration is doing to make sure that we can recover some of those funds. Obviously, it was a massive, the PPP program was unprecedented, and it was largely viewed as a success, but Republicans say, listen, there was some money that was left on the table.
Well, thank you, Bob. Great to be here with everyone. Energized to be here, and thank you for the question. First and foremost, reduction of fraud, waste, and abuse, and mitigating that is a top priority for our administrator, Isabella Casillas Guzman. And in the report that you see from the IG, there's a difference that we've delineated between potential fraud and likely fraud. So I think that's important to underscore. As well, there has been an investment from Biden-Harris in terms of going after those who have frauded the U.S. government. That's the bottom line. And so we've also installed some mitigation in terms of technology that has helped us with that as well.
Tell us a little bit about your office and what its mission is.
Well, the SBA mission is to help Americans, start, grow, and build resilient businesses. That's the bottom line. So our Office of Entrepreneurial Development is there to buttress that mission in terms of technical assistance, pathways, which is very, very important, and free educational tools. So we have the honor of collaborating with our network of small business development centers and women's business centers, SCORE chapters across America, as well as our community navigators that are, approaching small businesses that have never heard of the SBA, who don't know how to access SBA.gov, don't know what a resource partner is. So that technical assistance and education is really the foundation of our office.
You talk to small businesses all the time. What's the mood coming out of the pandemic and moving forward? And this is a big theme we'll talk about today. The number of small business applications is at a record high. Why is that?
It is a record high. Since President Biden took office, specifically the first 2 years, 10.5 million new business applications, which was a record, and up to the middle of this year, over 12 million new business applications. So that's a big responsibility. I actually met a business owner that was in this category a couple of days ago, and what she mentioned is that she was in a position where she had always wanted to start her business. She had this idea of doing fusion cuisine, and she decided that during the pandemic, that was her silver lining. Okay. At the same time, she said, I did it. I registered my business, but what now? You know, she had the wonderful idea. And certainly what we're talking about today, not only accessing capital, but managing capital and having the confidence as well. Access to confidence was a big deal for her. But she has weathered all those fear factors that she had.
Right.
But there's a lot of work to be done yet. And she is doing well, but she hopes to expand to her second location. So I think that's the embodiment of what we're talking about today.
When you talk about confidence, you look at some economic indicators. You look at the stock market recently, it's actually going up. We've seen record unemployment, but at the same time, inflation has gone down, but it's still high. And recently, polls have shown 8 in 10 people thought we're either in a recession or we're headed for a recession. Now economists are starting to pivot a little bit, and of course we've seen a big fight over Bidenomics from the Democrats and Republicans. But can you describe kind of the confidence of small business owners and potential small business owners?
I say it all the time, it's the highest honor, working for the American public and small businesses because they're the most resilient group. They are the first responders of our American economy. And I can tell you that they don't have the option of taking a day off. So there is a lot of hope and resilience. I met with a small business owner just yesterday in Louisville, LaToya Bradley, CEO and owner of Brew and Sip. She's on her second location, but hopes to open up to 6 or 7. That's her magic board number. So at the same time, she understands that there's some inventory issues, supply chain. She's had to make pivots in terms of not being open on Sundays and taking that day off for her family. At the same time, she knows that she's had to be more agile, more so than ever. In fact, she had her husband as the chef that particular day when I was there yesterday. Anyhow, she's hopeful, but she understands that there's supply chain dynamics. She prefers to use local, sourced ingredients, but she has to control her costs even more so. She has to control the menu options that she's offering. She's concerned with hiring right now. You know, it used to be about customer acquisition and retention was the #1 issue for small business owners. I should know because I've been supporting them on the ground for the last 15 years. Now it's hiring, and that's why she had her husband as the chef that day.
Let's talk about credit. It's difficult to get. It's kind of like life experiences. You're not born with it. You're not born with experience. You're not born with credit, and that's been frustrating for people to get it, and a big topic of why we're here today. Can you talk about that and what advice you'd have to aspiring small business owners to get the credit they need?
Fortunately, I am in tune with the small businesses on the ground. I visited with a small business owner last week, and he showed me how his credit score had dipped 80 points in one day. Now, it's because it's what he saw. He saw that dip, but that was actually a function of a reporting period and probably some factors in terms of available credit lines, et cetera. But we had an opportunity to talk, and that in his subconscious is affecting his decisions in terms of his risk tolerance, curtailing his vision to grow and scale, affecting inventory levels because he's thinking about that credit score and what it's going to do to him. So we then engaged into a conversation about, do you know the difference between a personal credit score and a business credit score? And he said, no, I don't. And so we were able to share those dynamics in terms of the differences. That's a 0 to 100 scale as opposed to the 3 digits on the personal financial credit. The differences that could affect lines of credit and such in the future. And all that was news to him. And so I think the word of the day is it's stressful for our small business owners. And so that's why I'm glad the collective wisdom in this room. And I'm also very thankful for our members of the small business committees, both in the Senate and the House. But the collective wisdom in this room and the innovators in this room, hopefully that we can have new conversations about credit profiles and compensating factors.
You used to work for the Latino Action Business Network. How do we make sure that credit is equitable across all demographics?
Yeah, so I did run the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, and we had the opportunity to work with scaled Latinx companies across America and Puerto Rico. But this is transferable to BIPOC communities as well. So in that particular community, we saw a lot of mattress money. You know, we want to hold on to this money. We don't know about credit. We don't want to owe people and have debt and accumulate debt. But there was an educational forum that had to take place in terms of financial leverage and how to use that and how to work on trust, which I think is a fundamental layer in this whole financial literacy and credit building initiatives across America.
What would help, this is kind of a broad question, but what would help small businesses from Capitol Hill Congress perspective? What would SBA like the Congress to do?
We have to meet small businesses where they are and everywhere they are, as Administrator Guzman attests every single day. So I think one of the biggest primary factors is not to consider our small business ecosystem as a one-size-fits-all, to split it up into personas, because those that are scaled, let's say over $1 million plus in annual gross revenues, that are procuring either through corporate America or the private sector or government, is different from those small businesses that are 5 employees or less, that have built financial success. We have to take a look at what their compensating factors are. So I think it's that, splitting our small business ecosystem into personas and understanding them and the terrains that they're in, including industry and geography.
There was a big, as you know, a big bipartisan deal on the debt limit, where spending levels were agreed to. I thought it was impressive that the parties were able to come together. However, now they're fighting over what they agreed to. So there is growing speculation that there will be a government shutdown at the end of September. What would that mean for small businesses and SBA?
Well, we've been through continuing resolutions before, and
Right.
small businesses don't have a choice. So we have to continue to make sure that they understand our eligibility criteria for our microloans and 7A programs, and also our 504 loans. It's a pathway for some, so we just have to keep, especially what I do in terms of entrepreneurial development, and those that support this mission, is we have to keep those networks alive and strong.
How do you interact with stakeholders? Obviously, policymakers meet with certain groups, but how does that work? Because this is, as you mentioned, you met with a lot of small businesses recently. That's part of your job. What would you advise stakeholders to help, number one, have small businesses thrive and get access to the credit they need?
The number one thing is make sure if we're talking about small businesses is to have them at the table. That's very, very important, because I feel sometimes that we're talking about policy and activities, and we're not actually hearing from them at the table, because they have a lot to offer. They have what's happening on the ground today, what their concerns are, what they've just been through, and I think that's more important than ever.
What would be your advice as far as resources? Maybe it's SBA's website, but if someone's watching, we have a large audience, they're thinking about a small business, they don't know what to do. What should they do?
Yeah, so you're right, SBA.gov. But what I do is take time. Like if you're watching right now, you have your cell phone, go to SBA.gov. If you're approaching that website right now through your cell phone, you'll see 3 bars at the right. So there's information about our capital resources. Get local assistance, which you can type in your zip code and look at the resources that are available to you, whether it's our 68 district offices across the country, our resource partners like our small business development centers, women's business centers, SCORE chapters, community navigators, and our veteran business outreach centers. There's information about federal contracting, because I talked to a veteran-owned business on the plane yesterday, and he said, I want to procure with the federal government. How do I do that? I said, do me a favor, let's go together, and we did. He added that website to his favorites. I gave him some, which was essential, but I also went into the websites with him. Here's a little bit about GSA schedules. Here's about getting certified in the first place. I talked about the streamlining that we have accomplished with Administrator Guzman's leadership in terms of, vet certification, how those turn times of being certified have been just improved drastically.
How does SBA work with other government agencies? Because as we all know, small businesses, they're not the biggest fans, perhaps, of EPA and OSHA. Is there an intergovernment process that you share feedback with different agencies or work together with them?
The best way I can answer that is through action and examples. So we have, through this office and, of course, one agency approach, we have an MOU with DOD in terms of making sure that we don't duplicate resources when it comes to government contracting awareness and certification, when it comes to procurement, specifically with our SBDC network and our Apex accelerators, formerly known as PTACs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about, have you seen any trends as far as thriving small businesses in different parts of the country, whether that's rural or urban? A lot of people forget about the rural areas. We talked about health inequity, inequities among small businesses with small credit, but are rural areas struggling?
Well, it depends on which rural area you're talking about, but I can assure you that rural America is very important to this office, important to the administrator and the president and vice president. And so the bipartisan infrastructure law, in terms of that being, that it permeates to our small businesses, we're seeing some value in that with our rural entrepreneurs. And also, increasing broadband access is critical, as well as—
A lot of people don't realize that a lot of people don't have access to broadband in rural America.
Absolutely. I mean, small business, I was with small business owners in Indian country. And
Yes,
I said,
big
well, how
problem.
can we attend a virtual meeting if we don't have broadband
Right,
access?
right.
So that's very important to us, as well as making sure that we honor some of the ag tech initiatives that are out there throughout the country. So we're trying to identify centers of excellence and making sure that they're communicating with others. So we have a regional innovation cluster network that is under our Office of Investment Innovation now. And so you'll see some work there in terms of organizations like Ag Launch, for example.
You've been in your position a little more than 2 years,
Yes,
right?
yes.
What has surprised you?
What surprised me? That's a great question. What has surprised me is that every single day, there's a new challenge for our small business owners. So it's my job to make sure that I'm in tune with them.
Right.
And the advice that I offered earlier today, to have them at the table, is something that I need to do every single day. So the new issue could be about supply chain. Yesterday I talked to you about the business owner was how do I expand to 7 locations, and making sure that we honor, that we're elephants and not hippos. Elephants have big ears. So just listening to what is your situation, what is your liquidity like? Have you talked to our district office? Which resource partners have you leveraged? Have you done your market analysis, et cetera? So that's the answer.
The feedback is very key
It's
to what you
critical.
do.
Absolutely.
We've run out of time. Please thank Mark Madrid for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.